Welcome back to the ground cinnamon. So, this season is celebrating Bangalore, the food of Bangalore, and an ode to Bangalore would never be complete without making donuts. In Bangalore, growing up, we were really blessed with some of the best bakeries, some of the best donuts I've ever had, especially the bakeries in CBD. And even my school made some of the best donuts I've ever had. Now, making some great donuts is all in the technique. All of us are like, we want donuts as soft as Krispy Kreme. You know what? I'm going to show you donuts that are as soft as Krispy Kreme, and it's all in the technique. It's all about when do you add your fat and at what temperature do you fry your donuts. Follow this technique, follow this recipe, and Krispy Kreme will have come home. For some simply perfect donuts, you will need 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. You'll also need 1/3 of a cup of sugar, 3/4 of a cup of water, 2 eggs. Here I'm going to be using 1 whole egg and 1 yolk. Here I have 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast, 1/4 of a cup of butter and some salt. You'll also need some vanilla essence and a liter of oil to fry these donuts off. So before anything else, you want to activate this yeast. To activate the yeast, you need to give it some food, which is why I'm going to borrow a little bit of the sugar, a couple of teaspoons, before adding this 2/3 of a cup of lukewarm water. Mix it and add the yeast. Now the yeast is going to take at least 5 to 10 minutes to activate. You want to see those bubbles on top. In the meantime, I'm going to separate my eggs. Now you could use 2 whole eggs, but then you'll have to account for the moisture coming from the eggs. So you'll have to reduce the water content, and that's going to take some calculation. So it's best to follow the recipe. It is on point. So all you want to see is a few bubbles on top of this yeast mixture. You want to see that the yeast is alive before you proceed, which is why a few bubbles is enough. You don't want to see any crazy activity. And into this, you can go in with the eggs and the sugar. Give it a whisk till the sugar has completely dissolved and your wet ingredients are ready. We are all set to make our dough. For this, of course, we're going to need the flour, and you want to season this flour. Now, because I'm using salted butter, I'm going to season it with only 1/2 teaspoon of salt. If you're using unsalted butter, you could up it to about 1 teaspoon of salt to 1.25 teaspoon. Make a well, and in go the wet ingredients. Now you want to bring all of this together, and if you don't want to dirty your hands, you could even use a spatula. Once it's all together, transfer it onto your working surface and you want to begin kneading. And knead for at least 10 minutes. You can knead for longer, but what you're really looking for is some stretchiness. You want to see some strength in this dough, and you'll feel it. You'll feel that strength. But at no point here do you want to add the butter. The secret behind a successful, soft, pillowy donut, almost like Krispy Kreme, is when you add your butter. You want to add your butter right at the end. So only when you feel that there's enough gluten development, that the dough is strong enough, you want to layer in your butter. You want to spread your dough out and layer in your butter. Oh no, I forgot to add the vanilla essence. No worries, I'll add it now. It's not the end of the world. So once you've layered your butter in, you want to knead your dough again for at least 3 to 4 minutes. It'll get super buttery, it'll get super soft, and you're in for some success. Now you want to let this double in size. Remember, when you're letting it double in size, you also want it to develop some extra flavor. So you want to give it enough time, maybe 90 minutes, maybe a couple of hours. In the meantime, let's make some chocolate ganache and toffee sauce, vegan toffee sauce. Making a ganache is the easiest thing ever. It's equal parts chocolate and cream. That's it. Now, when it comes to measurements, a lot of us don't have weighing scales at home. You don't have to sweat it with the exact measurements, 100 grams of chocolate, 100 mils of cream. Really, a lot of bakers would like you to believe that baking is an exact science. Don't take it that seriously. Here I have 200 mils of cream, and you want to heat this cream up, and I'm going to heat it at a very low flame. Now that's going to give me enough time to make some shavings. Here I have 120 grams of dark chocolate. The extra 20 grams is for additional shavings, which I'll use as garnish later. And 100 grams of white chocolate. You want to make the shavings because it's going to help the emulsion come together far more quickly. While you work on the shavings, keep an eye on the cream. The moment you see it steaming or you see a few bubbles emerging, you can add it to the chocolate shavings. That would be half and half, 100 ml each. And now you want to bring it together. So whisk it together very slowly till you get a very smooth, luscious sauce. You're going to get a better picture with the dark chocolate. Got to love the fast forward for this. Look at that magic. We're going to make a toffee sauce. I could have shown you a conventional toffee sauce, which was going to be sugar, butter and cream. That easy. But let's expand our horizons. Let's make it a little more vegan. And I'm going to replace the butter and the cream with coconut oil and water. Ideally, you'd replace the cream with some plant-based milk. I don't have it, so water would work just fine. But coconut oil is really revolutionary. You can use coconut oil as a replacement for butter. It gives you the same texture. A lot of us are scared that the coconut oil would be overwhelming with its flavor. It actually doesn't happen. Do give it a shot and let me show you how to make some vegan toffee sauce. Here I have half a cup of brown sugar. This is not the regular unrefined brown sugar. This is white sugar with added molasses. You know the difference because this sugar is far more sticky than the regular unrefined brown sugar. Along with this, I have 45 ml of coconut oil and 45 ml of water. This sugar is going to go straight into the pan along with the water, and we're going to let this come to a boil. Now what we're going to wait for is for these bubbles to get smaller, and this will take about 6 to 7 minutes. Once the bubbles get smaller, you know the water is completely vaporized and that the sugar is completely cooked through. In the meantime, I'm going to add some vanilla essence to the coconut oil. And as the bubbles get smaller, in goes the coconut oil. And now whisk the bejesus out of it. And we're done. Now let's get back to our donut dough. The first thing you want to do is dust enough flour on your working surface, and that is because this dough is extremely sticky. Now when you turn your bowl over, you want to let this dough fall on its own. And once it falls, you want to let it spread on its own. At this stage, the gluten is extremely relaxed, it's extremely weak, and this is how you want it through the cooking process. Even when you drop it into the oil, you want the gluten to be as soft. Now if you play around with this dough, if you work with it, the gluten will tighten out and your donuts are not going to be as soft. At this stage, you want to dust some flour on top of your dough, and you also want to dust some flour on your rolling pin. Remember, this dough is extremely sticky, and if you don't do this, it's going to stick to your rolling pin and you're going to lose out on the smooth texture. Now you want to spread it out very carefully. Again, very carefully. You act too hard on it and the gluten might tighten out. Now, as you spread it out, you want to spread it out to a thickness of a centimeter. These donuts will double. So if you want a substantial donut, about 2 centimeters thick, you want to spread this out to a centimeter thickness. Now when it comes to cutting your donuts, there is no rule as to what these donuts should look like. That they should be round or they should have a hole in them. Nothing of that sort. So for convenience sake, I'm going to show you a couple of conventional shapes and then I will show you some alternatives. Now when you do cut your dough out, if the dough doesn't pull back, you see that the dough is not pulling back as vigorously. If that happens, you've done a fantastic job. For the conventional shape, I'm going to leave a couple of them plain and the rest of them I'm going to make them with a hole. So you'll need a big cookie cutter and a small cookie cutter, and when you do cut the center out, don't forget to fry them and make some donut holes. Now, if you do not have a cookie cutter, you can simply use a knife and cut them into squares. There is going to be no difference in flavor or texture. It's going to taste as good, and without a cookie cutter, this is your only option. Unless you use a bowl. Yeah, you could use a bowl. Now there is some extra dough lying around and it need not go to waste. You can bring this all together like I am going to, and you can shape them into something like an eclair. Now these are quite commonly sold around Bangalore and they're called a New Zealand donut. They're not going to be as soft as the ones we cut with the cookie cutter. That's because the gluten has been acted on, but they work pretty well and they're quite tasty. Now you want to let them rise for another 20 minutes. They're not going to double in size, but 20 minutes is just perfect. No more, no less. In the meantime, don't let them dry out. Cover them with a tissue paper or a dry cloth. And we move on to the second most important part of making the softest donuts in the world. At what temperature do you fry them? You fry them at too high a temperature, they're going to brown a little too quickly and the inside might not be cooked through. If the oil temperature is a little too low, they're going to get soggy. So the appropriate temperature is between 140 degrees Celsius and 155. Most of us do not have thermometers at home, so the easiest way to find out if the temperature is right is the size of the bubbles. You want tiny little bubbles bubbling around your donuts and not large massive ones displacing them away. You want to be very careful when you drop your donuts into the oil. You do not want to deflate them, and so an easy way to circumvent that is to cut your donuts out on a butter paper. Follow that up by cutting the butter paper and dropping the donuts in with the butter paper. The butter paper will do all the handling. The best way to maneuver your donuts is chopsticks or forks, and turn them when the lower side has turned golden brown. Remember, more golden than brown. Really no brown at all. When it's turned a rich golden yellow color, you're really done, because that's when you've hit perfection. And now what? Dip them in the glaze you like, and look at that, shiny. You could also fill these or simply toss them in some sugar. That would work. And just look at these donuts. These donuts with an evening cup of black coffee, and life is perfect. And our beautiful, crispy on the outside, soft on the inside, crispy creme level donuts are ready. Again, it is all in the technique. Add the fat right in the end, fry them at the right temperature, and you will have beautiful, soft on the inside, crispy on the outside, crispy creme level donuts every single time, my guarantee. Do try them and let me know in the comment section if they turn out to be as good as I claim them to be. And if you've liked this episode, and if the donuts turn out to be as good as I claim them to be, do like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.